So there's a radical trans capitalist on Twitter called Catlin, and she's decided she doesn't like me, which is fine. No one's under any obligation to like me. But I do think that perhaps applying maybe the principle of charity to any kind of intellectual discourse might be to everyone's benefit, Michelle. I just want to point out why I think this. What you've done is you've taken an offhand comment in a live stream with 7 other people and compared it to Thomas Paine's work, The Rights of Man, a book that he published. And I don't know if I need to explain to you the difference between an offhand comment in a crowded stream and a well thought out treatise, but maybe I do. But the worst part about what you've put is that what I said and what Paine has said are not even contradictions. What I have said is merely downstream from what Paine has said. Let's take Paine's words first. It is a perversion of terms to say that a charter gives rights. It operates by a contrary effect, that of taking rights away. Rights are inherently in all the inhabitants, but charters, by annulling those rights in the majority, leave the right by exclusion in the hands of a few. They consequently are instruments of injustice. And what I had said, which again I do not believe is contradictory here, that is, I'm happy to call it a natural right, but it's not a right unless it's being enforced. And I'm not saying that it's not conceptually a form of injustice to have one's freedoms restricted with a Charter of Rights that will prevent you from infringing on the rights of others. What I'm saying is that you can claim to have all of the rights in the world that you like, but if there is no way of making sure other people are aware that you have whatever rights you claim to have, and you can't personally enforce these things, if you were to wake up tomorrow in the Congo and you found yourself surrounded by a bunch of headhunting cannibal types, and I'm not even joking when I say those still exist, do you think they're going to be like, well, I mean, we're not going to hurt this beautiful trans woman because she's got rights? Or are they going to do what the fuck they want? You can complain about that all you want, but that is reality. If you would deign to come down from your lofty perch for a moment, Michelle, you might see that what I'm saying is not a contradiction of what Paine is saying. I've literally just said I'm happy to call it a natural right, as Paine is arguing. But unfortunately, it's going to have to be enforced if you want to have any rights, and I am in agreement with Thomas Paine here that, yes, you are going to have to restrict some of your own personal freedoms, but it's actually for your own benefit to do so, because restricting some of your personal freedoms means that other people's personal freedoms will in the same way be restricted, and they won't use their personal freedoms to violate your rights. Or at least, hypothetically. And if they do, that's why we have governments. This is why I am, as an ANCAP would say, a statist. I think the state should exist. Now, if there's more than that you haven't included in your wonderful meme, I don't know why you've called me Carl of Swindon, because I'm not from Swindon. If there is more to what you are trying to say here, and I admit I didn't go and look up the quote from the book, I could, but I'm not going to bother. If there's more to this than you're trying to say, then I'm happy to discuss this with you. Why don't you just stop being snarky? I don't really understand why you don't just contact me. I'm not unreachable. I'd be happy to talk to you. I think you've probably got a lot of value to say. But doing this is hardly going to make me think, oh, I need to contact this person, because this person seems like they want a conversation. I mean, you can ask JF how I responded to his live stream. Just go and ask. So Rags replied, every time this account pops up on my timeline, it's a bad take on liberalists. And Michelle says, quoting Sargon is a bad take on the liberalists, apparently. Well, yes. That's highly uncharitable. And the thing is, you're not even right. As far as I can tell, I'm not contradicting Paine here. I agree that conceptually it is as he says, but in reality, if we want to actually translate anything that he said into a workable real-world setting, what I have said is fucking accurate. But this is the important point. Doesn't sound like a good figurehead to me. I'm happy for you to be the figurehead of a classical liberal advocacy movement. I will promote you. But to me, this just seems really catty and petty. And I don't think that you've made the point you think you're trying to make. And I'm not the first person to make this point to you. Stream with 5 people versus well thought out and well written philosophies not directly replying to a comment someone made, void of all surrounding context. I guess this would be called libertarian cringe, the rabid, almost obsessive assault on a stream to outline basic principles. To which Michelle replies, if your best defense is that people can't even make a coherent stream where they outline the most basic principles of liberalism, you're only proving my point. Not really. If your point is committee thinking is bad, then actually I agree with you. I wasn't happy with the first draft of the way these principles came out either, but I noticed you're not complaining about the current draft of the principles. I would really like you to actually try and address the meat of what is written, if that's possible, because I tell you what, if you have some good suggestions, I'll adopt them. I will change what I have written in line with your suggestions, as I have done for this latest iteration. I don't know why you're acting like this. But Dylan again says, I don't see what's so incoherent about it. I'm simply arguing they cannot be compared as if they're equal. Thanks, Michelle. That's quite flattering. Unless, of course, Sargon and pals are philosophers now, and Payne is somehow on the same level as Sargon and friends. Well, I would never try to insult Payne that way, because that just wouldn't be fair to him, obviously. And I've never called myself the equal of Thomas Paine or even implied it. I am, in fact, an advocate for what he is saying. That's it. But you do go on to say, I wasn't comparing Sargon to Paine, Lamau. I was showing how Sargon doesn't understand Paine's philosophy while using him as virtue-signaling arguments against the alt-right. Well, I don't agree. I just don't think you've really understood what I'm saying. I do, conceptually, as I've said, agree with him, but translating that into the real world is going to necessitate some way of protecting your rights from people who don't also agree. I mean, you're not going to start citing the non-aggression principle at me, are you? And someone else replies, de facto, any undefended right will not remain a right. I get that rights exist in spite of, not because of documents detailing them, but unless you enforce your rights, they may as well not exist in reality. And that's true. I mean, I don't see what your contention with this is. This seems like a really poor and, frankly, childish gotcha. And again, I'm happy to talk if you want to talk. Just contact me. You can email me. You can contact me on a Facebook group. I'm happy to chat to you about this. I would like to chat to you about this. You strike me as someone who might have some good advice. But this isn't it. And I don't see the point of this other than trying to improve your own status at my expense. Now, if that's what you're doing, just admit it. And in fact, there are other people further on saying basically the same thing. The fact that you think these contradict each other shows you have no fucking clue what you're talking about, just being tribalistic. I think she does have a clue what she's talking about, actually, Colt. But I think she is being tribalistic. I think she, for some reason, thinks that I'm about to tell her what to do, which I'm not. And Canadian Cold says, agreed, natural rights serve as our conceptual basis or starting point, but a right doesn't mean shit unless it's guaranteed or enforced. Try talking to a lion in a cage about your rights, see what he cares. If you have something to say about this response video to your tweet, Catlin, or Michelle, sorry, just email me. We'll talk. I would rather talk. I'd rather us not be enemies. I don't see what either of us would gain by being at odds with one another. I really don't.